Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. There is so much insane stuff happening in the news right now, I can barely process it all. I'm going to do my best in today's video to condense the news, but just know there's a lot going on. And the story we have to start with is 2 nights of missile attacks by the Russians against Ukrainian cities. On the first night, the night of the 21st, Ukraine did successfully shoot down 31 out of 31 Russian cruise missiles. The problem is there was a second night. I think it's actually been over a month since Russia has done one of these large-scale missile attacks. And the second night, the night of the 22nd, was the big one. According to Ukraine, 66 missiles and 63 Shahed drones were fired at Ukraine. Ukraine only successfully shot down 37 missiles and 55 of the drones. Meaning, according to Ukraine, 0 out of 12 Iskander missiles were shot down, 0 out of 7 hypersonic Kinzhal missiles were shot down, and 0 out of 5 of the Kh-22s. So we're seeing the real-time impacts of military aid for Ukraine being blocked by MAGA Republicans in Washington, D.C. Ukraine needs more air defense systems, they need more air defense missiles, and the entire world, every night, is going to see the consequences of blocking military aid to Ukraine. Of course, there's the usual pictures and videos online. I've seen so many of these. It's a tragedy that, to me, it's all starting to look the same. A huge crater in a street, a blown out building. I have to pause for a second and just share a single story of the horror that millions of Ukrainians are experiencing every night. Here is a Ukrainian woman who received a phone call from her mother. At the time she was interviewed by this reporter, she still didn't know the fate of her own mother. This is what she says. "It's extremely difficult for me because I don't have any information about my mother. She called me right after the attack. I talked to her. She said, 'A missile has hit us. I am burning, daughter. I am burning. I'm trapped and I can't get out. I'm sorry for everything.'" The West has the power to stop this, and at the moment is unable to do so. We have to find the political will and the political courage to stop these terrorist attacks, because it's only going to get worse. For idiots who say all we have to do is stop militarily supporting Ukraine and the war will end, there's this in-between area where tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians will be murdered by the Russian military. Russian strikes badly damaged Ukraine's largest hydro plant. The Dnipro hydroelectric power station was hit 8 times last night by Russian cruise missiles. Of course, there's pictures and videos online you can see for yourself. But this is what it looks like when a completely civilian hydroelectric power plant is hit by 8 Russian cruise missiles. This is a war crime. Russia doesn't care. But this is a shift in strategy. Russia is now trying to destroy Ukraine's hydroelectric power plants. Here's the map showing the 6 plants going down the Dnipro River. There was 6, because Russia has already destroyed one of these hydro plants, the Novokakhovka, north of the city of Kherson. Of course, Russia destroyed this plant last year. They did it by planting explosives inside. For anyone saying that a HIMARS missile launched by Ukraine destroyed the Novokakhovka Dam, this proves these dams are pretty tough. These dams are actually very difficult to bring down. Now, this dam was struck with 8 missiles. There could be structural damage. Over time, pressure could build and cracks could form and there's a serious problem. But this dam survived the night. But there's now a serious question whether it will survive the week. And we can zoom in and see how disastrous this would be. This is what Russia is trying to do. The Russians will say this is in retaliation for the attacks on oil refineries. But when you attack an oil refinery, the refinery just goes offline. When you blow up a dam, it floods and destroys everything downriver. Here's the city of Zaporizhia, close to 1 million people, I think 700 or 800,000. I don't know what the elevations are, but if you were to destroy this dam, blow this reservoir, I imagine this area of the city would be completely flooded. People would die, animals would die, buildings would be destroyed. It would be another ecological disaster, and even everything downriver would also feel the effects. So this is not parity, this is not equal. What Ukraine is trying to do, taking Russia's oil refinery capacity offline, blowing up civilian hydroelectric power plants, is not equal. It's much worse. Which is going to make this next story all the more infuriating. Washington reportedly told Kyiv to stop hitting Russian oil refineries. This is according to an article in the Financial Times. The Financial Times, citing an unnamed source, reported that U.S. officials relayed wishes to Ukraine's intelligence units to stop hitting Russian oil refineries for fear of rising crude prices and retaliation. Well, we now know what the retaliation is. But let's talk about the stupidity of rising crude oil prices. And I'm sorry, but oil still makes the world go round. Of all of Russia's vast resources, the world cares the most about and wants their oil. This is the price of ICE Brent crude. It peaked right after Russia's invasion. This was the summer of 2022 at around $122 a barrel. It looks stable, but if Russia's oil refinery capacity goes offline, then petroleum products will become more scarce, driving up prices. The price of diesel and the price of gasoline especially. So why does America care so much about this? And it's because here in the United States we don't have effective mass transit. As an American, I don't know why. This is one of my favorite graphs or maps, but here's Europe and all of their rail connections. And here's the United States and all of our rail connections. It's a joke. We don't have effective, efficient, affordable mass transit. So everyone in America buys cars and everyone in America drives. So why would a member of the Biden administration tell Ukraine to stop doing this? And it's because the price of gasoline worldwide probably will go up. And this is something that Americans irrationally freak out about. When I think what percentage of my budget goes towards buying gas, it's not a lot, but for some Americans who have long commutes, some Americans who have adult children or teenagers who drive, they've got 4 or 5 cars in the family, it does add up. But I want to share, for my American audience, I want to share the average price of gasoline here in the United States over the last 30 years. And the price of gasoline in 2008 was $4 a gallon. Today, the national average is $3.32. Gasoline is cheaper today than it was 15 years ago. But that's not how Americans think. To my international audience, if the price of gasoline were to go up to $5 or $6 a gallon nationwide prior to Biden's election in November, then Biden will lose the election. It's that stupid. It's that simple. And I think that's just what Washington was trying to communicate to Kyiv. But for any Ukrainians watching, ignore America. Ignore the Biden administration. Keep doing what you're doing because it's working. And we know it's working because we're seeing how Russia is responding. If we can get all this oil refinery capacity offline, this is going to severely cripple Russia by wintertime. We need to hasten a political or an economic collapse in order to most efficiently defeat Russia's military on the battlefield. If there's a political or economic collapse at home, the military's not getting paid, the soldiers will just retreat from the occupied territories. But there's now been a shift in the Kremlin because we're past Putin's election. Official Kremlin admits it's in a state of war with Ukraine for the first time. Kremlin spokesperson Peskov has referred to Russia's special military operation as a war against Ukraine. Because we're past the election, you can now say war in Russia, because this is what Russia wants now. Putin warns of full-scale World War III in his victory speech. I'm not going to play any clips of Putin's victory speech. He's a dictator. He's a mass murderer. And according to the Institute for the Study of War, indicators suggest Russia is preparing for a large-scale conflict with NATO sooner than anticipated. The timeline that everyone is giving is maybe Russia will attack the Baltics in 5 years. I don't think it's going to be 5 years. I think it's going to be 1 or 2 years if Ukraine can't hold the line. And just think about it. Why would Russia wait a long period of time? If they're going to mass conscript their soldiers now, and they can somehow steamroll through Ukraine, if Ukraine is ever abandoned and they run out of ammunition, then you might as well keep the soldiers going. Don't give them a breather when they're already used to being away from their family, when they're already not questioning anything Putin says or does. So here's, I think, one of the biggest headlines that has gotten buried in the last 2 days. According to Shoigu, Russia to form 2 new armies by the end of 2024. Here's the clip. Let me just read for you what he says. By the orders of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the development and increase of the combat capabilities of the armed forces of Russia is continuing. Army Corps of Motorized Rifle Division, the Dnieper River Flotilla, and a brigade of riverboats of the flotilla were formed. But by the end of the year, it is planned to form 2 combined arms armies and 30 units, including 14 divisions and 16 brigades. We will continue to improve the numerical combat composition of the Russian army in proportion to the emerging threats to the military security of the country. What did all that mean? The Russians are forming more divisions and brigades on top of their existing army than the combined armies of France, Italy, UK, Poland, Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden. I'm going to say that one more time. This year, now that we're past Putin's election, mass conscription, mass mobilization, the Russians want to enlarge their military so it's bigger than all of these NATO countries combined. This is a 1938 moment. The message being sent to all of Europe is start buying weapons and build your army, otherwise you might fall to fascist invaders. So how do we wake the West up? How do we wake up MAGA Republicans and other isolationists around the world? Russia is openly admitting every single day what their intentions are. Decades of war potentially. Millions, tens of millions dead, killed in these wars. so that Russia can reconstitute their empire. They've already controlled Belarus. They control 20% of Georgia, parts of Moldova. They want all of Moldova. They're threatening Armenia, the Baltics, Poland, Finland. Can Russia do it? Well, they have a population of 143 million. In theory, yes, they could force 10 million of their men into the military and be the largest military on the planet since World War II. But there's good news. There's good news. The Russians are still the Russians. They're insanely corrupt and incompetent. According to UK intelligence, Russian forces have only made minor gains in the Donetsk Oblast as Ukrainians are facing shell shortages. We're now in spring. It's mud season again. The muddy roads will make it harder for the Russians to advance. So while we wait potentially for the Czech shells to arrive, the Russians can't do much because they're stuck in the mud. So let me just hit you with some headlines. Russia urges Belgorod residents living near Ukraine border to evacuate. Russia diverts troops from the front line to protect Belgorod. Siberia's Krasnoyarsk to shutter prisons after inmates sent to fight in Ukraine. I've seen numbers tossed around that 200,000 Russian prisoners have been let out to be sent to Ukraine or to join the military in some capacity. This is a cost savings, shutting down these prisons and merging the remaining populations. But eventually, Russia's going to run out of prisoners, so they can't rely on this source of meat for their attacks. Russian Navy accidentally hits fishing boats. Authorities try to cover it up. This was a trawler, the Captain Lobanov. And yeah, during a Navy exercise, Russia accidentally sank one of their own ships, killing 3 crew members and injuring another 4. I'll link the video down below. In a major reshuffle, Russia names a new admiral as their Navy chief. Now that we're past Putin's election, he seems more willing to fire and replace military commanders. Not a good signal for Shoigu or Gerasimov. But Russia's just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. All of these ships are going down. It might take another year, another 2 years, but eventually Ukraine will sink every Russian Navy ship in the Black Sea Fleet. And changing the guy in charge isn't going to change that. Russian children will be forced to work at toxic and hazardous production facilities due to staffing shortages. So if you conscript and mobilized all the military-age men, who's going to work in the ammunition factories? And Russia's answer is children. Children are going to work in their factories to feed their war machine. Large Hadron Collider operator to end collaboration with 500 Russia-affiliated scientists. In my last podcast, I was talking to General Hodges, and he made a really good point. If you're a working professional, an IT specialist or a scientist or someone who does advanced research, now that we're past Putin's election, and Putin will remain in office for the next 6 years, you have no hope for your professional or academic career. So you need to get out. You might as well leave Russia now. Perhaps you had some hope that there would have been a different result from the election, but now that we're locked into Putin, I think a lot of these scientists, a lot of these engineers, a lot of these IT workers will secure visas and get out of Russia. Go to France, go to Germany, go to Canada, go to the United States, and maybe you can continue your research at prestigious places like the Large Hadron Collider. But kudos to, I think this is in Zurich, Switzerland, This is the correct move for the administrators of this facility. Russia needs to be isolated from absolutely everything. This is a breaking story as I'm trying to make this video, but pictures and videos are hitting the internet of a terrorist attack in Moscow. This is happening at the Crocus City Hall before a live concert. 3 men with guns in camouflage showed up at the event, and the reports are, at the moment, that 50 people have been killed and 50 people have been injured, and the building was set on fire and the roof has collapsed. I, of course, do not want any innocent Russian civilians to be harmed, but as Russia's society spirals towards an Orwellian state, Russia's borders are pretty porous, and it's very easy to get weapons into the country. So I think as repression continues, more of these kinds of events in Russia might occur. I don't think Ukraine has anything to do with this. I'm sure it's homegrown terrorism. Russians disgruntled with, there's a pretty long list of reasons why Russians would be unhappy. Okay. The crazy news continues. Marjorie Taylor Greene files a motion to remove Speaker Mike Johnson. For the last 3 months, we've all been wondering, how can we get rid of Speaker Mike Johnson? And I never would have predicted that Marjorie Taylor Greene would have been the one holding the bloody knife. But she's doing it. She submitted the resolution, resolved, that the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives is hereby declared to be vacant. So this is H.R. 1103. Why is Marjorie doing this? Here's what she says. The Republican-controlled House just passed a $1.2 trillion spending bill that doesn't secure our border, but funds full-term abortion and trans ideology. Let's ignore the but. She's actually correct. If Donald Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson actually wanted to secure the border, then they could refuse to fund the government. They could shut down the government until President Biden takes executive action to secure the border. House Republicans and Mike Johnson are not doing this because Donald Trump doesn't actually want to secure the border. He wants the border to remain a mess so that they can complain about Biden not securing the border. I said this here on the channel 4 months ago. If MAGA Republicans actually wanted to secure the border, don't tie that issue to Ukraine aid, tie that issue to funding the government. But Speaker Johnson doesn't actually want to shut down the government. People like government services. People in the military like being paid. So Mike Johnson didn't want to do that in an election year because it would have horribly backfired on Republican candidates standing for election in November. But Marjorie is in a safe district and doesn't care. And I don't know exactly what she wanted in the budget, but she was not happy with Speaker Johnson negotiating with Democrats to pass a budget and keep the government funded. So this is crazy. We don't know what's going to happen. Nobody in America knows what's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 weeks. This is weird because this motion to vacate requires a vote 2 business days later. The Congress is about to go on a 2-week recess for Easter. So this vote to remove Speaker Johnson might not happen until like early April. Literally nobody in America knows what's going to happen. This is so chaotic and dysfunctional. Democrats say they would likely rescue Mike Johnson from being ousted. So the theory is Democrats could offer a deal to Mike Johnson. We'll give you enough votes to keep your job if you just allow an up or down vote on the military aid package for Ukraine. That's not what Marjorie wanted, but that could be an outcome of what happens. Now, this Democrat quoted in this article is not named, but this didn't come from the minority leader Hakeem Jeffries. For my non-American audience, this is all insane to you, I'm sure. It's insane to me as an American. I really don't know what's going to happen, but I knew something like this was going to happen eventually. Given that House Republicans have such a small majority in the House, and everyone in the MAGA movement is insane, I knew that they would eventually turn on each other for some reason, and we might get a chance to remove Speaker Johnson, get someone else in the chair, and then we can get this up or down vote on military aid for Ukraine. Fingers crossed, this might happen in the next 3 weeks. What else is going on in American politics? Dueling discharge petitions aim to force a vote on stalled U.S. foreign aid bill. There's about 28 House Democrats who have not signed the discharge petition to vote on the Senate version of the bill. There's also a Republican discharge petition led by Brian Fitzpatrick. This is a waste of time because it's different from the Senate bill, and even if the House passed their version, it would then have to go back to the Senate. So we need these Republicans who have signed the Republican discharge petition to sign the Democratic discharge petition, and we need a couple more of these remaining Democrats to just sign the petition. If you know any of these representatives, if you're American, if you're represented by any of these people, please give them a call, send them an email, let them know they should do the right thing. Okay, let's get to the good news for Ukraine, and there's actually a ton of good news. German Defense Minister announces a $500 million military aid package for Ukraine. Thank you so much to the people of Germany. Czechia sends their final 2 Mi-24 attack helicopters to Ukraine. Thank you so much to the people of Czechia. Estonia announced a $22 million defense aid package. Considering how small the country of Estonia is, thank you so much for your overweighted support for Ukraine. You guys have been incredible. The Netherlands has announced a new $350 million military aid package for Ukraine, which includes air-to-ground missiles for F-16s, which are coming this summer. Thank you so much to the people of the Netherlands. Canada will provide Ukraine with advanced night vision equipment, and they've kicked in $30 million for the Czech-led Shell initiative. Thank you so much to the people of Canada. Finland also joined the Czech initiative, kicking in 30 million euros. Thank you so much to the people of Finland. Kosovo announced their first ever military aid package for Ukraine. Kosovo will send 2 military aid packages, including armored vehicles, trucks, and mortar shells. Kosovo is passing military aid for Ukraine when the United States can't get it done. Final feel-good clip. It's a Ukrainian defender learning he's going to be a father. May this baby grow up in a peaceful Ukraine. Congratulations to the new parents. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.